A cold November wind in 1779 swept across the blackened fields of the Genesee River Valley, where Seneca chief Gayantuka surveyed his Confederacy's destroyed food supplies. American troops had just burned hundreds of thousands of bushels of prime grain, leaving a vast people to face the approaching winter. Gayantuka knew that it was this very crop that had given his people absolute food independence and political power for centuries. European officers stood in utter bewilderment at the scale of these fields, unable to comprehend how the forest dwellers had managed to surpass the farmers of the Old World. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn why this crisis did not break the Confederacy, and how the lost ancient methods forever changed the colonists' own agriculture. What you're about to see completely shatters the common myth of primitive foragers in the wilderness. Documents from colonial officials conceal the truth that the indigenous peoples of the Northeast possessed highly sophisticated agricultural techniques. You'll learn 7 specific methods for working with corn that the Haudenosaunee Confederacy used for centuries. These techniques allowed them to harvest yields 3 times higher than those of the best European farms of the time. We'll examine each of these methods in detail to understand their incredible uniqueness. The hidden truth is that, for a long time, European colonists simply could not survive without this knowledge. We'll trace the path of the great chiefs and diplomats who used food security as their primary political weapon in negotiations. Each technique described will be explored through the lens of historical events and the specific individuals who made fateful decisions. You'll be amazed at how deep the peoples of the eastern forests' understanding of climate, soil, and botany was. Discover the secrets that are still being studied by modern agronomists around the world. For centuries, colonists considered a cleared field where only one crop grew to be the ideal farm. They stubbornly planted wheat or rye in straight rows, depleting the soil within a few seasons. At the same time, Symbiosis, known as the Mother of Nations, managed vast agricultural lands in a completely different way. Her influence was based on a unique system of intercropping 3 different plants on a single plot. This method went down in history as the Three Sisters system, combining corn, beans, and squash. 17th century European observers often described such fields as unkempt, overgrown plots. They did not understand the subtle botanical calculation hidden behind this apparent chaos. Corn served as a sturdy natural support for the climbing bean vines. In turn, the beans enriched the soil with essential nitrogen, which the corn consumed in vast quantities. A third plant played an equally important role in this complex biological system. The broad leaves of the squash covered the ground tightly, creating an ideal microclimate around the roots. This prevented moisture evaporation on hot summer days and suppressed the growth of any weeds. This configuration allowed the Haudenosaunee to harvest up to 3 million calories per acre. Such yields were completely unattainable in the monoculture fields of European settlers during that period. The effectiveness of this method directly influenced the political structure of the entire region. Symbiosis used its vast food reserves to ensure the neutrality of its territory. Her granaries were always full, which allowed her to host participants in peace negotiations from various corners of the eastern woods. It was precisely the bountiful harvests yielded by the Three Sisters method that made it possible to hold lengthy diplomatic councils. Without a stable food supply, the creation of the Great League of Peace would have been an impossible task. The difference in crop yields was reflected in very specific historical figures. A typical 17th century European field yielded about 15 bushels of grain per acre. Native American fields, when planted using the Three Sisters method, consistently yielded between 30 and 40 bushels of corn alone. In addition, that same acre yielded bountiful harvests of beans and squash. This agronomic gap was the reason why the early colonial settlements were constantly dependent on the local inhabitants. The Haudenosaunee women exercised complete control over this complex agricultural process. They made decisions regarding planting times, the allocation of plots, and the harvest schedule. The Mother of Nations established strict rules for seed exchange between different communities to maintain the high quality of seed stock. This control over a basic resource gave women the right of veto in military matters. Economic independence, based on corn, shaped the entire social structure of the Confederation. Colonial administrators often attempted to impose their own farming methods on the indigenous peoples. They proposed abandoning communal planting in favor of plow agriculture. However, The Confederation's leaders firmly rejected these proposals, recognizing their destructive impact on the soil. They understood that the European plow would destroy the complex root structure of their traditional fields. Preserving the old methods was an act of defending their culture and political autonomy. The integration of these three crops provided an ideal balance of nutrients for the human body. Corn provided carbohydrates, beans supplied plant protein, and squash delivered essential vitamins. This diet made the Haudenosaunee warriors and diplomats exceptionally resilient during long journeys. European travelers often noted the superior health of the local inhabitants compared to the colonists. The secret lay precisely in a balanced diet grown on the same fields. Ultimately, the colonists had to acknowledge the superiority of this agricultural model. During periods of acute food shortages, they began to replicate the mixed cropping system on their own small plots. Local diplomats often used the gift of Three Sisters seeds as a gesture of goodwill when concluding treaties. This plant literally built bridges between completely different cultures. Corn became the primary means of survival on the continent for both sides. This technique demonstrated the ability of indigenous peoples to create sustainable ecosystems long before the advent of modern science. Niximalization left behind a legacy that sustained the Great League of Peace for centuries. Their methods prove that cooperation in nature yields far greater results than competition. We'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think about this approach to agriculture? Please share your thoughts in the comments. But how exactly did they prepare the soil without iron tools, creating landscapes that baffled early explorers? Instead of smooth furrows plowed by a plow, their farmland was covered with thousands of neat earthen mounds. The Symbiosis' outstanding orator and leader, known as Red Tunic, defended this land time and again in disputes with representatives of land companies. He knew that each of these mounds was the result of precise engineering calculations, not just a primitive pile of earth. This field geometry ensured the crop's incredible resilience to climate changes. Creating earthen mounds about 30 centimeters high solved several agronomic problems at once. In the spring, the mounds warmed up in the sun's rays much faster than the flat surface of the field. This allowed seeds to be planted 2 weeks earlier than usual, which was critical given the short northern summer. During periods of heavy rain, water ran off into the depressions between the mounds, protecting the plant's roots from rotting. During droughts, these same depressions retained moisture, functioning as an effective micro-irrigation system. 18th century European farmers were accustomed to turning over layers of earth with heavy plows, exposing the soil to wind and rain. Symbiosis observed how colonial fields rapidly lost their topsoil due to severe erosion. Native American farmers never disrupted the overall soil structure, tilling the land only in the planting areas. They carefully loosened the old mounds with wooden hoes, carefully preserving the root channels from previous years. This gentle approach allowed them to use the same plot for 20 years without a decline in crop yields. Several corn kernels were placed in each mound at a precisely measured distance from one another. Later, bean and squash seeds were added to the same mounds, creating an ideal shared habitat for the plants. The distance between the mounds was about 90 centimeters, which gave people easy access for weeding. This spacing also ensured maximum sunlight penetration to the lower tier of leaves. Europeans, accustomed to sowing grain in a continuous carpet, were amazed by such a rational use of space. Diplomatic missions often took place right against the backdrop of these unique agricultural landscapes. Symbiosis used the sight of the well-tended fields as an argument in negotiations over the recognition of Native American territorial boundaries. He pointed out to American officials that his people owned the land not only by birthright, but also by virtue of their skillful stewardship of it. The neat rows of mounds demonstrated the existence of a sedentary culture with a high degree of labor organization. This shattered the stereotype of nomadic tribes, which the colonists had used to justify their land seizures. The technology of planting in mounds required a deep understanding of nature's seasonal cycles. Farmers incorporated fish remains, or wood ash, into the soil directly at the base of the mound before planting. This targeted fertilization was dozens of times more effective than spreading fertilizer evenly across the entire field. Nutrients were delivered precisely where the root system of the future plant was developing. This achieved the maximum concentration of beneficial elements with minimal expenditure of valuable resources. When American settlers began occupying the former lands of the Haudenosaunee, they encountered difficulties plowing the old fields. The mounds, tightly compacted over decades, hindered the movement of plows and horses. Many colonists were forced to temporarily adopt the Native American method, planting corn on the existing mounds. They were surprised to discover that the yield on such plots exceeded their wildest expectations. The practicality of the ancient method temporarily prevailed over European agricultural traditions. Segoya fought until the end of his days to preserve his people's traditional way of life. In his speeches, he constantly returned to the theme of the connection between people and the land, cultivated by the hands of their ancestors. He understood that the loss of traditional agricultural skills would lead to complete dependence on food supplies from outside. For him, protecting the mounds was tantamount to defending the political sovereignty of the entire Confederation. Land organized in this way was the tangible embodiment of their right to absolute independence. Today, modern no-till farming methods largely mirror the philosophy behind the ancient Native American mounds. Agronomists confirm that avoiding deep plowing preserves the soil's microflora and prevents erosion. Precision seeding and fertilization are considered the cutting edge of 21st century precision agriculture. The Haudenosaunee were already putting these principles into practice in the pre-Columbian era. Their deep understanding of the environment was several centuries ahead of European agricultural science. Soil sustainability ensured massive grain harvests. This grain needed to be processed correctly and safely for long-term storage. The colonists gladly adopted the culture itself, but overlooked one crucial step in the preparation process. This mistake cost them dearly, triggering a wave of unexplained illnesses. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how wood ash saved entire generations from certain death? When Europeans brought this plant to the Old World, they quickly recognized its high yield and hardiness. However, a few decades later, in regions where corn had become a staple food, a mysterious epidemic broke out. People grew weak, lost their minds, and suffered from severe skin lesions. During his expeditions, French explorer Jacques Cartier noticed that the indigenous peoples of the Northeast had never faced such a problem. The answer lay in a unique chemical process now known as niximalization. The Haudenosaunee never ate dry corn, simply in the form of ground flour, as European millers did. They always boiled the kernels in a weak alkaline solution made from the ash of hardwoods. This process took several hours and required precise temperature control. The ash broke down the kernel's tough outer shell, making them soft and suitable for further processing. Jacques Cartier described huge cauldrons in which the women of the tribe simmered corn for hours. He saw only a culinary tradition, completely unaware of the complex chemistry at work. In dry corn, vitamin B3 is found in a bound form that the human body cannot absorb at all. The alkaline environment created by the ash released this vital vitamin, making it available for digestion. It was precisely a deficiency of this vitamin that caused pellagra, the very disease from which Europe's poor suffered on a massive scale. In addition, treatment with ash significantly increased the availability of calcium, which was scarce in the forest diet. Women thoroughly rinsed the grains after cooking in clean running water, removing residual alkali and the loosened husks. The resulting products served as the basis for nutritious soups, bread, and travel flatbreads. Grain treated in this way could be stored much longer without being affected by mold. This was a true food technology that saved the peoples of the eastern forests from hidden starvation. Diplomatic envoys, traveling between settlements, always carried a supply of this prepared corn with them. Prolonged negotiations required a clear mind and robust physical health, which depended directly on the quality of their diet. Jacques Cartier noted the outstanding physical condition of the local leaders with whom he sought to establish trade relations. Europeans actively bought up Native American grain, but ignored the recipe for its preparation, considering cooking it in ashes a barbaric custom. This arrogant mistake cost the health of thousands of colonists on both sides of the ocean. Knowledge of the correct proportions of ash and water was passed down from generation to generation within communities. Different varieties of corn required different concentrations of alkali and varying boiling times. If too little ash was added, the kernels would remain tough and indigestible. If too much was added, the product would acquire an unbearably bitter taste and become unfit for consumption. This delicate balance was maintained solely through the experience and careful observations of the women who ran the longhouses. The impact of this process on the development of Haudenosaunee culture cannot be overstated. With access to a reliable source of energy and vitamins, the communities were able to develop crafts, politics, and diplomacy. A healthy population formed strong councils, where laws were debated and strategic decisions were made. Food security, ensured by complex chemical processing, became the foundation of their geopolitical dominance in the region. Corn was not merely food, it was a tool for maintaining the strength of the entire confederation. For a long time, colonial authorities refused to believe that the Native Americans possessed the secret to good health. They attributed illness to a harsh climate or contaminated water, continuing to grind dry corn in their mills. It was only centuries later that scientists officially confirmed the genius of the ash processing method. The discovery of the process by which vitamins are released put an end to the long-standing debate, fully vindicating these ancient techniques. Indigenous peoples protected themselves from disease solely through their brilliant understanding of the chemical properties of plants. Today, the process of niximalization is used worldwide to produce high-quality corn products. Without this discovery, it would be impossible to imagine the existence of the modern food industry in the Americas. The eastern woodland Indians had mastered this complex biochemical process long before their first contact with European explorers. They transformed a potentially dangerous product into an ideal source of vital energy. This fact completely debunks the myth of their technological backwardness during the colonial period. Preparing high-quality grain was only half the battle in the harsh struggle for survival on the continent. The next crucial step was protecting these enormous reserves from moisture and severe frosts. The indigenous people devised a unique method of protecting their food that had no parallel in Europe. In the next chapter, you'll learn how Native American engineers hid hundreds of thousands of bushels of corn right underground. We'll reveal the secret of these hidden storage sites, which allowed communities to survive even during the hardest times. Imagine a granary that cannot be burned, found, or destroyed by artillery fire. Chief Gayantuka, whose name literally translates as corn planter, masterfully managed these invisible reserves. When General John Sullivan's troops invaded Seneca territory, they expected to quickly wear down the Native Americans. They had no idea that a vast portion of the harvest was safely hidden in deep forest caches. The Haudenosaunee built underground storage pits that resembled complex engineering structures. They dug bell-shaped pits up to 2 meters deep in the driest and highest-lying areas. The walls and floor were carefully lined with a thick layer of dry hemlock, or birch bark, which possessed antiseptic properties. This insulation reliably protected the grain from groundwater and soil moisture. The storage pit was sealed with a watertight wooden shield and camouflaged with sod until it was completely invisible. Gayantuka understood that the safety of his people depended not only on sturdy walls, but also on secrecy. In such underground caches, corn could be stored for 3 to 5 years without losing its germination capacity or nutritional value. European granaries of that time constantly suffered from mold, dampness, and rodents, which destroyed up to a third of the harvest. The Native American storage sites created a unique microclimate inside, with a consistently low temperature. The absence of oxygen in the tightly sealed pit prevented the growth of any bacteria or fungi. The strategic importance of these reserves became apparent during the most difficult moments of the colonial wars. When Sullivan's expedition burned the visible fields and above-ground structures, they reported the complete destruction of the Confederacy's food supply. However, Gayantuka and other leaders were able to quickly retrieve reserves from secret caches scattered throughout the forests. This allowed thousands of people to survive the harsh winter and continue their diplomatic and political struggle. The underground storage facilities proved more effective than any European-style stone fortresses. The process of storing grain was strictly regulated by the community council. Only the very best, carefully dried and hand-selected corn was sent to the hiding places. The ears of corn were arranged in a specific way to ensure maximum air circulation between them inside the capsule. Each storage unit held between 30 and 50 bushels, which constituted an impressive supply for a single family. The total number of such caches around a large settlement could number in the hundreds. These hidden reserves were Gayantuka's most powerful bargaining chip in peace negotiations with the new American government. He knew that his people had not been broken by hunger, and thus could engage in dialogue from a position of dignity. American diplomats often wondered where the Native American delegations obtained so many resources after devastating military campaigns. This hidden economy allowed the Confederacy to maintain its political clout, even as it lost some of its territories. The corn hidden underground served as a reliable national gold reserve. Interestingly, the colonists themselves later attempted to replicate this system of food storage. Faced with New England's harsh winters, they began digging similar pits to store vegetables. However, they often lacked the knowledge needed to properly insulate the pits with bark and select suitable soil. Their supplies rotted due to improper ventilation, a technique the Native Americans had perfected. The imitation always fell short of the original, which had been developed over centuries of careful observation of nature. The granaries served another vital function. They ensured the preservation of the seed stock. In the event of a total crop failure due to drought or frost, the community always had a reserve for spring planting. This prevented the village from disappearing entirely as a result of a single unsuccessful season. Gyantuka carefully monitored the replenishment of this reserve, considering it the key to the future for all generations. The Haudenosaunee agricultural system was designed with multiple layers of resilience. Today, archaeologists are finding the remains of these storage pits throughout New York State. The blackened layer of bark at the bottom of the pits still bears traces of perfect insulation. These findings fully confirm the scale of the agricultural logistics of the indigenous peoples of the Northeast. They managed their resources with the prudence of modern investment bankers. Underground corn was the foundation of their survival during the most turbulent historical periods. Storing grain in hiding places was a key factor in the internal stability of settlements. However, diplomats and envoys required a completely different kind of food for their long journeys between communities. They needed a concentrated source of energy that would not burden them with excess weight on the road. In the next chapter, you'll learn how the ideal travel food for long journeys was created. Are you ready to discover the secret of an ancient dry ration that surpasses modern military rations? The famous peacemaker Hiawatha, one of the founders of the League, traveled across vast territories to unite scattered peoples. He needed a food source that would not spoil for weeks, weighed little, and did not require building a fire. The answer to this challenge was found in a unique method of processing green corn. Traditional dried corn was too hard to eat quickly while traveling. Therefore, the Haudenosaunee developed a method of harvesting the ears at the milk stage, when the kernels are still soft and sweet. Women harvested this early crop in late summer, long before the main crop had fully hardened. These fresh ears were then carefully laid out on special wooden racks over hot coals. The slow roasting process lasted several hours, infusing the kernels with smoke and heat. During roasting, the sugars inside the green kernels caramelized, giving them incredible nutritional value. After roasting, the ears were hung in the sun or under the eaves of longhouses until they were completely dry. The dried, shriveled kernels were easily separated from the cob and ground into a light, fragrant flour. This product was practically weightless, took up minimal space, and could be stored for months without any problems. It was precisely these small bags of corn flour that Hiawatha took with him when setting out on his historic missions. To prepare a hearty meal on the road, a diplomat or warrior didn't even need an open fire. All it took was mixing a handful of this roasted flour with cold water from the nearest stream. The powder swelled instantly, turning into a thick, slightly sweet, and incredibly nutritious porridge. This allowed envoys to remain unnoticed in the forest, without drawing attention with campfire smoke. Such mobility gave the Confederacy a huge advantage in the speed of transmitting important information. European soldiers were tied to cumbersome supply trains, carrying barrels of salted meat and heavy sacks of flour. Their movements along forest trails were slow, noisy, and required enormous logistical efforts. Traveling light, Hiawatha could cover distances 3 times faster than any colonial patrol. His travel rations provided the ideal balance of carbohydrates to maintain high endurance day after day. A unique roasting technique solved the problem of supply on the most challenging routes. This innovation played a key role in shaping the very structure of the Great League of Peace. Representatives from 5 different nations were able to gather regularly for the Great Council at the central fire in Onondaga. Without a light travel ration, such annual political gatherings would have been impossible due to the hardships of the journey. This food technology literally bound the vast territory into a single political space. Decisions that determined the fate of the continent were made by people whose strength was sustained by green corn. When the first explorers encountered this food, they were struck by its practicality. French fur traders quickly realized that their heavy European rations were completely unsuitable for canoe travel. They began trading large quantities of this travel powder with Native American women for their long-distance expeditions. Native American cornmeal became the standard food for anyone venturing deep into the unexplored forests. This was the first instance in the continent's history of a mass transition by colonists to local food technologies. The process of making this concentrate required a masterful understanding of temperature control. If the ears of corn were left over the coals too long, they lost their nutritional value and became bitter. If not dried sufficiently in the sun, the valuable product would quickly become moldy inside a leather travel bag. The Haudenosaunee women mastered this art flawlessly, providing their communities with a reliable resource. They were true food engineers whose innovations were centuries ahead of their time. Today, the sports nutrition industry spends millions developing lightweight energy blends for mountaineers. The Haudenosaunee solved this problem several centuries ago using fire, the sun, and milk corn. Their understanding of the processes of sublimation and caramelization was entirely intuitive, yet scientifically precise. Hiawatha successfully completed his mission, largely thanks to this unseen support from his community. His historic success is inseparable from the achievements of an ancient agronomic culture. But how did they manage to consistently grow a heat-loving plant in the harsh conditions of the north? The answer lies in the remarkable and painstaking breeding work carried out long before the advent of modern genetic laboratories. For years, local farmers selected the best seeds, creating unique varieties for each microclimate. In the next chapter, you'll learn how the Native Americans literally harnessed time and seasonal temperature fluctuations. Are you ready to discover the astonishing truth about the genetics of the eastern woods that saved their crops from freezing? We're used to thinking that the development of new crop varieties is the work of 20th century scientists in white lab coats. However, Chief Corn Planter, another outstanding Seneca leader, owned fields where a genetically unique crop grew. His people managed to adapt a southern tropical plant to a harsh climate with a short frost-free period. This was a monumental achievement in plant breeding that changed the agricultural landscape of the entire continent. Corn originally originated in the warm climate of Central America, where summer lasts almost year-round. To grow it in the area that is now New York, the maturation period had to be cut nearly in half. For many generations, the Haudenosaunee carefully selected seeds from the plants that ripened first. They created the famous silica corn, capable of yielding a harvest in just 120 days, and sometimes even in 90. This precise management of the botanical timer saved the crops from the early autumn frosts of the north. The corn planter took pride in the fact that his community possessed seeds of ideal quality for their specific valley. Native American breeders understood the concept of microclimate better than many certified European specialists of the time. Seeds that yielded an excellent harvest on the southern slope of a hill were never planted in the cold lowlands. For each type of soil and level of sunlight, there was a specially bred variety. Such diversity ensured the survival of at least part of the crops under any weather anomalies. When the colonists attempted to bring their own corn varieties from the southern colonies, they suffered a crushing defeat. Their plants did not have time to form ears before the first cold nights arrived and perished completely. British farmers were forced to ask the local inhabitants for their northern adapted seeds. The transfer of this genetic resource often became a key provision in peace treaties between Native Americans and settlers. Corn Planter used this knowledge as an important lever of diplomatic influence in the region. The variety of corn varieties cultivated in the eastern woods amazed the first botanists of the Old World. The Haudenosaunee grew flint corn for long-term storage, dent corn for flour, sweet corn for seasonal consumption, and even popping corn. Popcorn, which today is a symbol of movie theaters, was developed by the indigenous peoples of the Americas centuries ago. Each variety required its own specific methods of harvesting, drying, and subsequent culinary preparation. It was a highly developed, diversified agriculture with clear specialization. Preserving the purity of each variety was a top priority for all women engaged in farming. They understood cross-pollination long before the term appeared in European science. To prevent different varieties from mixing, they were planted at a considerable distance from one another, or at different times. The fields were separated by strips of dense forest, which served as a natural barrier against wind-borne pollen. This strict botanical control made it possible to preserve the unique characteristics of each variety for centuries. Corn Planter often invited American officials to inspect his model crops during border negotiations. He showed them ears of corn in various colors, from bluish black to ruby red and dazzling white. This diversity was no accident. Each color held its own sacred and practical significance for the community. The officials left fully understanding that they were dealing not with savages, but with experienced farmers. The selection process was tangible proof of their centuries-long connection to this land. The genetic heritage of these indigenous varieties played a decisive role in the development of global agriculture. When Europeans finally began growing corn on a large scale in northern Europe, they used descendants of the Haudenosaunee seeds. The cold tolerance developed on the shores of Lakes Ontario and Erie saved many European regions from famine. The world gained a reliable source of food thanks to the patience and keen observation of the women of the eastern woods. Their triumph in plant breeding became a global asset for all of humanity. The experience of breeding new varieties proves that science can exist without microscopes or academic laboratories. The method of careful selection and an understanding of natural rhythms made it possible to bring about a true botanical revolution. Corn Planter went down in history not only as a warrior, but also as the guardian of this unique agricultural knowledge. His name is forever linked to those perfect fields that astonished General Sullivan's soldiers. The earth gave back to people exactly as much care as they put into every single grain. By reaping their harvest, the Native Americans proved that nothing in nature is useless or superfluous. In the next chapter, you'll learn how they used the part of the plant that Europeans simply threw away as waste. Are you ready to see a production process that operates with absolutely no waste? We'll reveal the secret to using corn husks, which will change your perspective on ancient technologies. Watch until the end to understand the amazing philosophy of zero waste consumption. The colonists always regarded corn stalks and husks as trash, to be burned or fed to livestock. For the Haudenosaunee, however, the harvest meant obtaining a vast amount of invaluable industrial raw materials. Joseph Brant, an outstanding diplomat and leader of the Mohawks known as Haudenosaunee, highly valued these handicrafts in trade. Native American artisans created a system in which not a single part of the plant went to waste. The thin yet incredibly durable husks, enveloping the cob, became the foundation for an entire textile industry. Women carefully removed these husks, dried them in the sun, and sorted them by length and strength. They wove the damp husks into dense, durable mats, which were used to cover the floors and sleeping areas in longhouses. These mats excellently retained heat in winter and protected against the dampness of the earthen floor. Haudenosaunee often presented such skillfully woven items as diplomatic gifts to British officers. From the softer inner leaves of the husks, artisans made shoe insoles and special insulation for moccasins. This material had the unique ability to wick moisture away from the foot, keeping feet dry during winter treks. British soldiers, who suffered from frostbite in their leather boots, eagerly purchased these corn husk insoles, using corn husk protected feet from the cold more effectively than many European woolen alternatives of the time. It was a survival technique, created literally from agricultural waste. In addition, corn husks were woven into sturdy ropes, baskets, and bags for carrying cargo. A tightly woven basket could even hold small grains without letting moisture in. The most beautiful and light-colored leaves were used to create traditional faceless dolls for the education of the younger generation. Haudenosaunee understood that such extensive processing of raw materials made his people economically independent of European supplies. They had no need for thread or fabric from across the ocean as long as they had their own fields. The plant's tough stems themselves also found uses in the community's daily life. They were used to make lightweight darts for practicing accuracy, musical instruments, and even temporary fences. The porous stalks left over after the grain was harvested were used as stoppers for vessels and as fuel to quickly kindle a fire. Europeans marveled at how a single plant could provide food, clothing, household items, and warmth. Waste-free production was not merely a concept, but a harsh necessity and a way of life. Haudenosaunee diplomatic successes were largely based on his people's economic self-sufficiency. He was able to negotiate with the British Crown as an equal, without having to beg for resources. The Confederacy had everything necessary for life within its borders, producing goods of the highest quality. Trade in corn husk crafts provided communities with additional income, strengthening their financial position in the region. Corn literally bound the society together with its strong fibers. When the reservation system began to undermine the traditional way of life, these crafts became a means of preserving cultural memory. The art of weaving baskets and mats was passed down from one generation to the next, preserving ancient patterns and techniques. Haudenosaunee urged his people not to forget these skills, even in the face of America's mass industrialization. He saw in these simple woven objects a tangible embodiment of the connection between times and generations. Handicrafts remained an act of resistance against complete historical assimilation. The colonists, who initially looked down on these materials, eventually came to appreciate their incredible practicality. American farmers began using corn husks to stuff mattresses, which proved to be both inexpensive and comfortable. In rural areas, weaving mats from leaves became a popular pastime during long winter evenings. Cultural exchange took place through everyday objects created from a shared resource. The wisdom of indigenous peoples gradually became part of the new American identity. The idea of zero-waste consumption, which the modern world has only recently embraced, was the absolute norm in the eastern woods. The Haudenosaunee approached nature with deep pragmatism, deriving maximum benefit with minimal harm. The Haudenosaunee left behind the understanding that a nation's true wealth lies in its ability to utilize available resources. Their technologies were guided by a deep respect for the life cycle of every plant. They saw value where others saw only waste. Every grain, every leaf, and every stalk served the greater purpose of preserving the people on their land. All 7 of these methods demonstrate the tremendous technological superiority of Native American agronomy over the colonial practices of that time. This complex system of survival allowed them to weather the most severe historical crises and preserve their heritage. We have reached the climax of that dramatic scene with which we began our story today. Let's return to that cold November day to witness the finale of this historical drama. We return to November 1779, to the scorched fields of the Genesee River Valley. Chief Gyantuka looked at the smoldering remains of the harvest, but there was no despair or sense of doom in his eyes. He understood perfectly well that General Sullivan had managed to destroy only the tip of their enormous agricultural iceberg. Reserves in underground caches, stockpiles of travel flour, and the preserved seed bank guaranteed the Confederacy's survival. Technologies honed over centuries had triumphed over brute military force, allowing the people to sustain themselves during the darkest of times. The story of the Haudenosaunee and their corn is a story of a monumental triumph of engineering, botany, and diplomacy. Their knowledge saved millions of lives around the world, forever changing the global agricultural system. Great leaders and diplomats used food as both a shield and a sword in the struggle for their people's independence. Let us know in the comments which topics from indigenous history you'd like to see covered in our next videos. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new and amazing facts about the survival technologies of the past.